for dinner.
Hey, KMR team, it's great to be live with you again on a Wednesday night. Tonight we are talking great training equals great results, and I've got some awesome panelists with me here. But before we get into those, I want to remind you that this 2 Saturdays' time, on the 8th of March, we have the International Women's Day run. It is in conjunction with all the Hobart running clubs. It's at the Cascade Brewery from 8:30. There's a 4 kilometre and an 8 kilometre to be done on that. And then we have a panel afterwards where we're going to be listening to some of the great women within trail running and asking them Q&As like we do right here on our KMR Facebook Live every Wednesday. So who have we got with us tonight to talk about your training prep? We are 4 weeks or just a little over 4 weeks from KMR. Tonight with us, we have Jed Morgan. He is the clinic leader and an exercise scientist from one of our great sponsors in Kieser. He's looking after our scholarship teams in there and doing a fantastic job. Jed, great to have you with us here tonight.
Thanks, Manny.
Alongside Jed, you will see one of the absolute stars of Tasmanian trail running. I am, of course, talking about Dave Bailey. He has done a whole lot in the trail running world. He's a regular at our Kinani Trail Series events. He's a regular at KMR, and we love having him on board. Dave Bailey, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Manny.
And then up in our third person with us tonight, that's right, we've given you 3 experts in the field tonight. We have got Jack Saward. She is one of our 2025 scholarship recipients. She's currently training with Dave and the guys from Kieser. She's a former state weightlifting champ who's turned her hand to trail running, but she's turned her feet to trail running, and we're going to get her perspective on the training that's been given to her over the last few weeks and what's left for her coming up to KMR, as we say, in 4 short weeks' time. So what we're going to kick off with here tonight, guys, is we are going to look at what are the components of an effective trail running plan. I'm going to start with you, Dave. You've obviously done a fair bit of training in your time for such events. What do you think is involved in the key components of an effective trail running plan?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a tricky one because people just, get plans online and apply cookie cutter plans. But everyone is different, in terms of strengths and weaknesses and backgrounds and how long they've been running for, their experience, etc. But what you really want in there is a good amount of variety. So you want some really, really easy runs where you're just getting out and it's about time on feet. And you want a couple of harder sessions as well. If you're a beginner, you might have 1 hard speed session. If you're more experienced, you might have 2 to 3 speed sessions a week. And then on top of that, you usually have a long run. Most people do their long run on Sunday. It's a bit of a regular thing with trail runners. But essentially you've got your 1 or 2 speed sessions a week, your long runs, and then you've got your bread and butter easy runs, which just fit around that. But some people might only run a couple of times a week, and that's really good. Just as long as you're mixing it up, getting out there, and perhaps doing at least 1 hard session a week just to mix up the pace a bit.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Now, Jed, you're a runner yourself. You've competed in Bruny Island and those sort of events. You've obviously done a bit of distance running. You often find in the beginner running community that we think, okay, I'm doing a 25K event. I need to make sure I do 25Ks in my running plan. Is that the way to go, or are we running shorter distances running up to it?
Yeah, great question, Manny. If you're a beginner, you want to start off slower and build up to that distance. So depending on your running ability and how quick you can go, you sort of want to start off lower kilometres and sort of probably lower volume through your weeks and build up on top of that, whether it's doing the same distance 2 or 3 times a week to build up towards that sort of 25K, your body just gets used to it, and that's the way that I've found, certainly starting my running off and seeing other people come into Kieser and beginner runners with their coaches has been a low volume and low kilometres to start off with and build up to that bigger event as well.
So you'd be suggesting not running the full distance before an event, or should we go out and do our 25 or our 64Ks prior to it? Well, we might have lost. You can jump in there, Dave. I think we might have lost some audio there with Jed.
I can jump in there, Maney. So it depends, but depends what distance you're sort of aiming for. But I tend to take a quality over quantity approach. So when I was training for ultras, anything from 50k to 100k, the longest I'd run in training was 3 to 4 hours. But if you're running the 25k foothills, the mountain run, for example, you'd probably run the full distance in training at least a couple of times before the event. But I'm a big believer about just focusing on the quality and making sure that you're not overdoing it, because there comes a point in a long run where it's just becoming more detrimental than benefit to you. You're just wearing down the body. So, even for the 64k, with the scholars this year, we've got a couple doing the 64, and their longest long run is about 4 hours. So I don't think you always need to run the full distance in training. It's just about building up that base fitness, and that should be the main focus.
Yeah, nice one. Now we're going to flick to you, Jack, as the guinea pig, so to speak, in the scholarship team. It's a bit of a change from weightlifting to running up and down mountains. How have you found the distances or the components of the training leading into these events, which are not that far away?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting journey learning about trail running and training for running. It's a totally different world to the strength training world. It was a question I'd had for Dave only in the last few months around long runs and should I be running the full distance of my events before I do the events. And of course, as Dave's answered, not always is the answer, depending on a few factors. But I've definitely learned a lot about what to put into the week for trail running, as Dave was saying, around the speed sessions and the easy sessions. I think it's been a surprise to learn about how much running training is about those easy runs and sort of getting the endurance and the time on feet in the bank, as opposed to working hard all the time, and probably suffering from this feeling early on of not working hard enough, but just trusting that this is actually proper running training. This is how it's done, and seeing over time the benefit of that, really noticing, this is working. This is how it's done.
Yeah, that's awesome. We probably should clarify, Jack, which event are you doing?
I'll be doing the 25, the mountain run.
No. Yeah, nice. One of our great events, the 25k mountain run. It sells out every year. It's a top event. Now, I'm going to throw to a bit of training for specific terrain. Now, obviously, with these events, we've got a lot of uphill, a lot of downhill. There's some technical trail. There's some running. What sort of stuff should we be incorporating into ensuring that we're okay for all of those terrains? I'll jump to you, Jed. You guys obviously do specific strength training. What sort of strength training are we doing with the guys to make sure that they're getting that terrain-specific workout for their body?
Yeah, Kieser is based off one set to momentary muscular fatigue to get the best results and outcomes possible. And we've got a plethora of machines that can really help isolate the specific muscles that are really important for trail running. We have an ankle machine, and we have two ankle machines which do inversion and eversion, and that's really helpful to gradually build the weights up to help people when they're running on that terrain, because we know how different that terrain is on the mountain. And so the smaller muscle groups are really, really important for stability as you're running up and down. But then we've got other machines that's like a traditional leg extension and a leg press, which do the bigger muscle groups like the quads, the hamstrings and the glutes, to really ensure people can drive up the hill and control themselves down the hill as well. So each of the scholarship runners, including Jack, when they come through, had very specific testing done to ensure that they had the right machines in their program.
Yeah, that's some awesome programs. So it's a little more than just going and doing leg day at the gym, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 100%. And Kieser's whole methodology is based off trying to train the whole body, so not just the lower body. So Jack's got a couple of really cool machines in her program that targets, around her core and her lower back. Some upper body stuff, because we know that a lot of the runners will have packs on or bags and using poles in some cases. So yeah, it's not just a leg day 2 or 3 times a week. It's a nice little bit of variety, which ensures that they're strong through their whole body.
Yeah, that's a really super approach. Dave, I'm going to move over to you. Uphill versus downhill. What are we doing to make sure that we've got both catered for in our training plan? Because obviously we start pretty much straight up the side of Kunani. We're running with her, but she's trying to hold us back because it's all the way up, and then obviously down the other side. What are we putting into our training program to making sure that our legs are great for both of those?
Yeah, KMR is one of those really rare events where you have a bit of everything. So you have the technical aspects, you've got, muddy sections, you've got rocky sections, you've got massive climbs, massive descents, and a bit of flat running as well. So you just really want your training to be really done on a lot of different terrain. So, if you live in Hobart, you really want to be up on the mountain. There's just so much variety up there. And as you said before, it's got a really big climb to start. So you really want to work some longer climbs into your training, and not be afraid of incorporating some fast downhill as well into your training. A lot of people, have a tendency to avoid downhill because they see it as something they're probably not as confident about. But the only way you get confident with downhill running is to apply it in training and do specific sections. So, my recommendation would be, if you live in Hobart, get out in the mountain. If you live in the northwest there's plenty of options there, like the Dole Range and, even Mount Roland and those sort of areas. So wherever you live in Tassie, there's some sort of trail which sort of mirrors the KMR course. So I definitely recommend really focusing on technical trails, and making sure that with your speed sessions, you're perhaps doing a hill session a week and, a downhill training specific session as well.
Yeah, that old adage of hills pay the bills. We'll all be looking for those bills to be paid in late March. Jack, that's what I'm just going to jump onto something that Jed said there, which really surprised me, the upper body training, because we are carrying packs. Obviously, you've come from a very highly trained upper body skill. How have you found the upper body stuff for trail running? Because obviously, we've got to carry packs around with our gear. It's a different style of upper body training to get us to that point.
It is, and it's totally different from the movement that I was doing in weightlifting. So we worked in sort of a vertical plane in weightlifting, very much up and down, whereas my exercises at Kieser are about strengthening more specifically in the upper back, so supporting that posture and strength through the chest and upper back, as well as those core exercises. So I started the journey with some chronic back pain that I've had for a lot of years, and the exercises at Kieser have really helped improve that and improve my confidence in managing that back pain really, really significantly. So it's really targeted those areas for trail running, but also addressing, I guess, some other just life domains along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we look at our training plans, and obviously we're going to be coming towards the back end of our training plans now with 4 weeks to go. I want to have a little bit of a chat, if we can, about the pacing. Like, where should we be at in our training right now? And I'm going to throw this one open to everyone to talk about. I'm not going to pick on one particular person, so we'll jump in. Where should we be at? What's our focus right now with a little over 4.5 weeks to go until KMR?
So you're probably you're reaching your peak right about now. So usually I tend to have 2 easier weeks before an event. So there's that gradual taper just to make sure that you're going into the event well rested, niggle free. All your energy stores are up, electrolyte stores are good to go as well. So usually about 3 weeks out, I would say, would be your longest run. So you'd be thinking about that, trying to bank one last long run before the event. Doing a bit of sharpening, a couple of speed sessions as well. But by now you should be in peak mileage really in terms of the plan. And then just in those last 2 weeks, just gradually just running a little bit less to the point where your last week is basically about 30% of the mileage you'd been running previously to that.
And Jed, what about our strength work? Like 4 weeks to go, are we starting to taper off, or are we continuing all the way through to the event?
Yeah, we're gonna. It's a great question. We're going to do a little bit of both. So we will continue to train, upper body and probably the core still that momentary muscular fatigue, but we will start to ease a little bit on the leg work. So Jack will have another test done in regards to VO2 max in probably the next couple of days or the next week, and then we'll start to adjust her program post that to ensure that she's absolutely prime and ready to go come the end of March for the wonderful KMR.
Yeah, that's great. It's not like these programs you're putting up. These aren't, one size fits all at Kieser, are they? They are literally, you have got Jack in and you have tested her as well as our other scholarship people, and you've literally gone, this is your plan. So Jack's plan probably looks very different to the next person's plan.
Yeah, 100%, Maney. It's really cool to get someone in, and when in their initial assessment, they'll go through some different testing, and we've got the ability to actually strength test people through a strength dynamometer that we've got at the facility, and we do a lot of pre and post testing. And so for a lot of the scholarship team, and Jack included, they would have had their glutes, quads, and hamstrings all tested. And then we'll retest those in the next couple of weeks to see how much stronger that they've gotten. And what it shows the participants, and I'm sure that Jack might be able to speak on behalf of this, is how confident they should be that they're going to be strong enough to deal with the terrain and get up and down the mountain on the day.
We'll throw to you, Jack. Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling confident about that last long run that's coming up the next week and a bit?
Yeah, yep. I've been feeling really good actually for a few months. I think the strength sessions have absolutely helped with that. Feeling really strong in the legs, and I think it's at the point where when I am on those runs and tackling that terrain, I'm not really thinking about what the body's capable of or worrying about the strength of getting up the hills and down the hills. It's just doing it and enjoying the flow without having to be worried that I haven't done the work in the background.
Yeah, we'll get to the, I'm about to ask a question about the elevation gain and how important that is. But for those of you watching us online, feel free to throw a question in the comments. We will get to those. I can ask the team for you as to what you'd like to ask, because obviously the questions I'm throwing out, I'm just the guy on the microphone at the end of your runs. So if you want a question, make sure you throw it into our comments section there on Facebook, and we will answer that for you. A reminder, of course, about the International Women's Day runs coming up on the 8th of March at the Cascade Brewery. Check out the socials for that. It's all over the local run clubs. Now, obviously, KMR has an absolute buttload of elevation. It also has a buttload of coming downhill. How important is that elevation gain and descent in your training? I'll throw to you on that one, Dave, King of the Mountains.
Yeah, so it's incredibly important. So even the foothills, for example, that has quite significant elevation in terms of the kilometres you actually run, and there's some really tough hills in that course. So I think that you need to really incorporate hills into probably 60 to 70% of your runs. So you want to make sure that you have your long run, on hilly terrain. But I just think incorporating hills wherever you can is just so important for this event. You're just really strengthening those legs and getting ready for the specifics of the race itself. So, for example, I run on average, I run about 90 to 100 Ks a week. And my weekly elevation is usually between 2,000 to 3,000 meters of vert. And I tend to focus my hills on my hard session days. So I have, 2 hill sessions. I have a hilly long run, and then actually my easy runs are on the flat. I try to make my easy runs as easy as possible, just to make sure that I'm recovering enough from my harder runs. And with that being said as well, of course you want to strengthen the legs for the downhill as well. But what goes up must come down. So, if you're on the mountain and you're climbing, that you're bound to have a pretty gnarly descent as well. So try and incorporate some technical descents in those runs, and you really feel the benefits on race day.
Yeah. Now, Jed, obviously, I'm going to guess there's some very different muscles that are used for running up hills as we use running up downhills. What are the areas we're working to make sure that we've got our legs as best as we can? Like if we're doing the vertical downhill, we're obviously going to concentrate on one set of muscles. If we're doing the bigger events that have got both in there, what sort of stuff are we focusing on to make sure that our legs are good for both going uphill and coming down?
Yep. I think you mentioned it before, Maney, but hills pay the bills sort of thing, and it's a really great combination. Strength training and running go hand in hand. The stronger your muscles are, the easier it is for you to get up the hill and also get down the hill. And having been a part of KMR for the last couple of years, I've seen some really cool people run the event and seeing how they act on the uphill and on the downhill as well. And so, again, muscle groups that, your main drivers uphill are definitely your calves, your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings as you're going up. And then as you're coming down, you're looking at that quad stability through your knees. So you're putting a lot of load through your quads. And the stronger your quads are, the less pressure you're actually going to have through your knees. And that's feel a lot better come the end of the run once you do it.
Yeah, okay. And we've got a question coming through from someone online. It's Colleen Davidson. If you don't know, Colleen was one of our initial scholarship recipients. She ran with us last year. And she's got a question for you, Jed. Is 3 strength sessions a week at 30 minutes enough combo of core, arms and legs? And can you overtrain in strength sessions? And what would that look like?
Yeah, great question. We work really closely with Colleen, and I just want to start by giving her a massive shout out, mainly because last year seeing Colleen cross the finish line was one of the proudest things that I've seen from me is in terms of an outcome measure, because her commitment to strength training and running and the plan meant that she was able to cross that finish line. It was an awesome thing to see. So well done, Colleen, first of all, and great question as well. 3 training sessions is more than enough of strength training per week, but the big thing is quality. You're coming in and you're doing 3 sessions and they're 60% and you've still got reps in the tank with single set training, you're not going to get the benefits that you will if you push yourself to momentary muscular fatigue. And importantly, on that shorter training consistency, the biggest other factor is actually the rest days. So you must have at least 1 day in between your strength training to ensure that your muscles can, re-energize themselves and be ready to go again. So yeah, great question, Colleen. 3 times a week, more than enough, but it's all about the quality of the strength exercises.
Yeah, that's probably really important, those rest days. I know we all look at people like Dave and think, wow, 100 Ks a week, how do you fit in a rest day? But I can assure you the man himself is having his rest days in there to make sure that he is fueled and ready to go for each of those sessions. Jack, we're going to swing across to you and a little bit about your journey, about how it's felt having this structured plan for you and how much has that impacted your enjoyment of getting out there and doing these runs.
Yeah, it's been a really incredible journey to be part of the scholarship team. Having, I guess, not only the Kieser strength sessions, but the coaching, the support from Dave. It's probably a few times a week I drop in to ask Dave a question about something, and always super helpful responses. All the team and Link, just such a fantastic team and culture to be a part of the Kunani mountain run in general. But having a structured program, I think, has really helped me stay on track. I did a bit of running before I started with the scholarships team and just really had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to learn, but there really is just so much to learn, and so much I didn't know. And so it's provided me with this really great opportunity to sort of get my ducks all in a row and give me the best possible opportunity to train well and feel good and perform well, but also recover really well. So I've been feeling really good all round, and I think it's because it is such a well-rounded scholarship with just so many cool things attached to it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for all those out there who are thinking about it, obviously the scholarships will be up again next year. Throw yourself into it. Have a crack. We'll get you through these events and maybe stretch you further than you thought you could go. Maybe you're thinking, I could only ever do a 25K or the Alpine Marathon. But with the proper training from the guys from Kieser and the man himself, Dave Bailey, we can probably get you through things you never thought were possible. We've got a question here from Nathan Taylor, and I think this one might be for you, Dave. And he's asking a shorter ascents and descents with loads of repeats, so 5 to 10 times 200 meters-ish. long comparable to longer hill repeats, 2 times 1 kilometre, or are you targeting different muscle groups over the longer intervals?
So you definitely want variety in there, and both sessions serve different purposes. So I'll do a bit of a plug here. I did a bit of a uphill running video for Find Your Feet recently. So it's on their YouTube channel, and I just we'll set out a couple of hill sessions which have been my favourites in the past and which have really benefited me. And I think if you want to get better at hills, you need that good mix of training. So you might have, a short, sharp session where it's 10 by 1 minutes, hard uphill, jog back down. But then you might have a longer session where it's, 3 by 15-minute climbs, for example. And I'm talking about advanced training here. Obviously, there's a broad range of experience and sessions you'd set for various people. But they definitely work different muscle groups, as I'm sure Jed could highlight a little bit more than what I could. But they each serve their purpose, and you really want good variety in there. Different gradients as well. So you want some nice steep hills, but also having that gradual climb as well is really useful for strength work.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. Anything to add to that one, Jed?
Nah, I think Dave's hit it on the head. Variety, that's the key. If you do the same hill 3 times a week with the same level, you're just going to continue to get the same results and be probably a little bit bored by it. Variety is absolutely key. So just reiterate what Dave said there.
Yeah, nice one. And look, I think this next question we've got, and Nusha has asked us a question here, and I think it's a really good one for those of us that are new to trail running and really kind of don't know what we're doing. And I'm going to fire this one at you, Jed. And the question is it a good idea to do a hill session the day after a strength session? How do you decide what days to do the strength sessions? How do we plan it? How do we go about deciding what we do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we don't do too much of that in terms of the programming for the scholarship team at the moment. But ideally, the day that you do a strength training session, you don't want to do too much high intensity stuff, so no hills and things like that. The day after is not the worst thing to do. You're certainly going to have some residual fatigue, but that's good to help strengthen your muscles as well. But a variety of things. So I normally try and get my longer runs in on the days that I do my strength training, and more of my high intensity ones on the days that I don't.
That makes sense. And Jack, is that how you're attacking it in these? Are you leaving your high intensity runs or your hill sessions for days where you haven't done it, and leaving a bit of a break in there?
I've played around with it a bit. Initially, I was doing my strength sessions on my easy run days and found that to be really compatible. Sometimes when the week changes and the schedule changes, I've found myself doing strength sessions and hard training days on the same day, or even within the same morning, so almost within the same session. And I haven't found there to be a problem with either. I think it can. I'd be interested in the science behind getting the most out of that strength session and getting the most out of the running session, and not sort of losing your gains on either by combining them or doing them too close together. Definitely at times I've felt a bit of fatigue in the body after a strength session when I find myself running and feeling a little bit heavier. But playing around with it has been good, just to feel what feels right and what fits in with the week. So I can't say I have a solid answer, but generally I would probably try and do it on my easier run days just to get the most out of both.
And I'm guessing, guys, that's something that's really important with any plan, is to make sure it fits in with your life and how you're feeling on the day. I'm guessing, Dave, there's a fair bit of you with your level of running of listening to your body, and that's really important in these instances.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people get their training plan, they think it's a rigid plan and they can't really adapt or be flexible, or they'll let the coach down. But I really encourage the scholars just to really listen to their bodies and, get in touch with me if they're feeling particularly fatigued, especially on a day which is set for a session or something like that. I'd always encourage them just to go for an easy run. Depending on the level of fatigue, it might not actually be beneficial if you head down there for a hard session, because you might just wear yourself out and become, burn out and not recover for the next session. So it's so important, and especially in my training as well, I'm always listening to the body. I've got a lot of people have demanding jobs, but I just think mentally I have a pretty demanding job, which really takes it out of me. So I have to always constantly be listening to the body on a day-to-day basis. And if I go out there and I might do a warm-up and do a couple of strides to see whether I'm in good form to do a hard session. If the body says no, I'll just call it quits and I'll just go for an easy run. And that's just really benefited me in the long term, being able to run. I've been running now for 15 years. It took a long time to become sensible, but now that I've made all the mistakes in the world, I can definitely recommend listening to the body and just skipping that hard day if the body says no.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to swing back to something you said there about warm-ups in just a few minutes, because I think that's really important. And Jed, I'm going to get you to maybe talk us about what we should be doing pre-race. But one thing I wanted to ask, and this will come to you probably, Dave and Jed. Like, Dave, you're running 90 to 100 kilometres a week. You're doing your trail running. What about cross-training? Are we doing other stuff as well, or are we just focusing on our running and our strength work?
So I think that everyone's really unique in this way. Some people can tolerate a high load of running, whereas some people do need to mix it up with cross training. Me personally, because I've been running for a long time, I feel as though I have a good base, so that pretty much every day is a running day. And the only cross training that I do is my 3 strength sessions a week. But I know that cross training is just so beneficial for a lot of people. Getting on the mountain bike, going for a hike, all those things are just super beneficial to your general base fitness. And one thing I would recommend people look into, if they haven't heard about it before, is pool running. So pool running, in my opinion, is the closest thing you'll get to real running in terms of benefits and mimicking the running motion. So essentially, you get in the deep end of a pool where you can't touch the ground. You wear a flotation belt and you just do the general running movement through the water. And I've used that to great effect through periods of injury. Once I was injured for 6 months, got straight out of the pool and I was almost running the same times as I was before I got injured, just through pool running. And I was doing that every day as a substitute to running. So I do recommend that people explore cross training because, every cross training exercise has some sort of benefit, whether it's strength or aerobic.
Yeah, and obviously Kieser is giving us part of that cross-training, Jed, but what are the advantages of those doing other activities other than the running or the strength as part of our preparation or our way of getting ready for one of these events?
Yeah, it's a good question. You've obviously got your resistance-based stuff, which Kieser is very specialised in, but then your aerobic-based stuff is honestly what I would say is do what you enjoy. Find something that you enjoy and do that. And if you're training for a specific event like the Kanani Mountain Run, you do have to run quite a lot. But sometimes breaking up those sessions with runs, I've done a little bit of looking into pool running as well, Dave. And I think it's actually something that's very beneficial for people. But other people enjoy swimming, and that's still an aerobic event, and cycling. It's variety mainly, and it's also just enjoyment, and that's what we see a lot of in programming for people. It's actually cool doing your resistance training here. What are you going to do aerobically outside that you enjoy that's going to get you that benefit?
And we've talked a little bit about the different devices you've got for getting strength in one area. How important is our core to giving us stability while we're running with Kanani?
Yeah, massive. This is a great question, Manny, and a question that comes up quite a lot with a lot of our clients that we see, and whether it's just they want to get stronger in general areas or they want to actually get stronger for an event like the Kanani Mountain Run. Your core is so important, and when we talk about core, it's not just the front, and everyone thinks about the 6-packs when you talk about core. The core is your transverse abdominis, but your lower back as well. And so, you're going to be in different positions when you're running up the hill where you're a little bit sort of bent over and you're trying to stay up straight to open your lungs up and get air in. And to be really strong through that core allows your lower body to drive you up the hill, up the mountain, I should say, or down the mountain. And it just offers balance and stability. And that's massively key when you're on the mountain and you've got different terrain to go towards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in my time doing some events up on the mountain, it was that ability to stay stable, which was absolute key to getting through the events. There's a couple more areas I want to talk about here before we sign off for the night, because, you know, we say these go for half an hour, but we never quite stick to that. We always go a little bit over, and we're happy to do that. I imagine these guys, they could talk for hours on this topic. So if you do have any more questions, if you're on the Facebook Live, throw them up there and I will ask the crew how they're thinking. But the first one is, what are we doing in warm-up? Like prior to the event, what are we doing to activate those muscles and get them working? I'm going to go at this. I'm going to ask all three of our participants tonight. I'm going to start with you, Dave, as to what your warm-up looks like. Jack, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, how are you doing it? What are you doing to get ready for events? And then, Jed, I want you to throw in the sports science side of things of what we should be looking at doing before we start an event. Dave, what's a warm-up look like?
So I have a very specific routine which I just never deviate from. So I'm just so particular. I'm really pedantic. I like to get up at least 3 hours before a race just to get the body moving. As you know, sometimes you wake up, you're just so tired, and I just think it allows the body an opportunity just to loosen up a bit. So when I get to the race hub, I usually get there at least an hour before. Again, just to move around a bit, you know, even a walk to pick up your race bib. It's all just getting movement into the body. And making sure you're responsible. Generally, about 40 minutes prior to the race start, I'll just go for actually, I'll start before that. Before I actually go for a jog, I'll just do some dynamic stretches. So it's leg, just shoulder rotation. And it's really videos out there which give you some examples for dynamic stretches. Once I do that, usually only takes 5 minutes. I just go for a 10 to 15 minute jog. And depending on the race distance, if it's a really short, fast distance, I like to do some strides. So for people who aren't familiar with what strides are, essentially it's just it's running at a faster pace for about 100 meters or so. So you want to almost be, by the end of the strides, almost at your 5K sort of race pace or even faster. So you want to ease into those though. You don't want to just go straight into a sprint after you jog. You don't want any torn hamstrings or calves or anything like that. So your first stride should just be really gradual, building into it. So by the end of the 100 meters, or it could be 80, 60 meters, you're starting to hit your top end speed. And then it's just a walk back, and I tend to do about 5 or 6 of those. By the time I do that, I usually have 15 minutes to go before race time. So straight to the race start line, and I'm still moving all the time. You know, I'm still shaking the legs, moving the arms around, because you don't want to become tight in those last few minutes before the race start as well.
I've been privy to a few Dave Bailey warm-ups, and they tire me out just on the start line watching him do them. But yeah, it's obviously an important part of what he does as a trail runner. Jack, you're learning at this. You've gone nuts this weekend. What are we doing before that event to get the body running? What have you learnt from the scholarship experience to get you prepared to go out and run these events?
Well, that's probably the first thing I should say, is that what I'm about to say has basically come directly from Dave anyway. But what I've been doing for my long runs and for my harder sessions lately is before I start my actual warm-up run, I do a bit of dynamic stretching. So leg swings on both sides, swinging the legs out forwards and touching the toes, touching the heels to warm up the glutes, maybe some walking lunges, just swinging the arms, that kind of dynamic movement to get the blood flowing. And then before any harder sessions, there's always a 10 to 15 minute, sometimes 20 minutes, easy pace, just to get the blood moving and get going into the run. And on easy runs, of course, we're doing an easy pace for all the longer runs, an easy pace for the whole run. So sort of still easing into it until the body feels good and warmed up. And that's what it will look like. So as you say, this weekend is Gone Nuts up on the northwest coast. And so I'll be doing those same dynamic stretches and go for an easy run of 10 or 15 minutes, probably in that 45 to 30 minutes before the race start.
Nice. And Jed, what are we looking to activate? What are the muscles we're concentrating? KMR starts uphill straight away. What are we activating and how are we doing it before the race starts?
Yeah, it's very similar to what both Jack and Dave have said. It's movement. It's no one's ever gone well in an event where they haven't done anything and they've just walked straight to the start line and then just gone. It's all about movement and blood flow. So, active stretching such as, calf raises. I see a lot of people, I play footy, and I see a lot of people before the games, they're sitting there just stretching calves, but they're not actually activating them. Then they go out and they'll have a soft tissue injury in the first few minutes. And it's similar with running. Like, you've got some interesting terrain up Kanani, but you've got straight uphill at the start. So you've got to be really diligent at what you do prior and run throughs, like Dave was saying, just activating those lower body muscles. And, I love how Jack was saying, shake the arms, sort of move the upper body and a few rotations and things like that. It's all going to contribute to a really, really positive experience on the mountain.
Yeah, and obviously we gloss over this a little bit, and we talked this a little bit about on last week's Q&A, and it's post race. Now, obviously at KMR we are so lucky. We got the Kieser guys who will be there. They will give you a rub down. They will make sure you are in tip top condition. But what are we doing post race to make sure the next few days aren't complete hell and we're getting back into training for our next event or back up on the mountain running? What's our post race warm down look like for an event like this?
Yeah, so a bit of a self-plug for Keys, but we will be there on the Saturday or all weekend. But if you need any treatment post-run, please come and see us because we're more than happy to help. And we have got some fantastic physiotherapists who'll be up there giving massages and education on what to do. But it really is just continuing to move the body a little bit after the run. The thing that people tend to do a lot of in maybe shorter runs than what Kanani offers is to stop straight away and their body seizes up a little bit and then they're sore afterwards. And I can probably speak on behalf of myself when I did Overland a few years ago, where I just stopped and sat in a car and wondered why I couldn't move for the next sort of 2 to 3 days. Movement and making sure that you're doing a lot of stretching of the lower body. And obviously the other important component, mainly, is nutrition. So once you're finished, a really, really good feed of high protein, making sure that you're getting sugars back into your body, all that sort of stuff with that sort of stretching and walking around is just going to make you recover quicker and be able to train for your next event, like you were saying.
And Dave, obviously recovery for you. You are back-to-back events. You're pretty high up on doing all the events you can. That recovery, not only from your training sessions, but from your races must be pretty important.
Yeah, definitely. And just talking about post-race, so what Jed says, essentially what I do, I'd probably go for a 10-minute jog. And then first thing after that is to get some protein and some carbohydrates into the system. Might have a protein shake and a muesli bar, for example, or something like that. But yeah, it's all about the 1%ers in the week after the race. So you probably, especially if you're doing one of the longer distances, you probably don't want to do too much stretching because you could have micro tears and you really don't want to end up injuring yourself. So it's all about that gentle movement. So you might go down and do some wading in the salt water, for example, is really good. Do that for 10 to 15 minutes in cold water. After a couple of days, do some rolling, get some blood flow through the muscles, and you're just looking after yourself, making sure that you stay really well hydrated. You're eating, high quality meals for a couple of days afterwards. But you also have to celebrate the achievement. So, it's okay to have a wine or a beer to celebrate, but just make sure that overall, you're really trying to focus on getting your body right to go for your next event.
Oh, thank goodness, David. I thought we were going to go 2 weeks in a row where it's don't go to the beer tent. But obviously those celebration drinks at the end are very, very important. Maybe not the first thing you do, but make sure you do jump into them. Of course, we are hoping to have the Kanani ice bars there again. Please avail yourself of those in the run hub because they will be there for that cold water cool down that David was talking about. We're a little too far from the beach maybe, but we'll certainly have that on board. Now, we are approaching 45 minutes of our half an hour chat. So I'm going to get the last piece of advice from each of our people here of what we're doing and how we're going. Jack, I'm going to start with you on this one. Your last piece of advice when you've been following this program. What's your advice for the last month running into KMR?
Oh, big question, Maney. I think for anyone who has a plan, stick to the plan. So stick to your program, listen to your body, as Dave says, like get on top of niggles quickly before they become bigger issues. But that consistency is really important. And if you're trying anything new, try it now. Don't try it on race day. Get ready now.
Yeah, great advice. That was very much the same thing in our nutrition chat last week with Karen Hill. Don't try anything new on race day. Jed, what's your takeaway? What's our last thing for the last 4 weeks leading up to KMR?
Yeah, I think exactly what Jack said. Stick to your plan, be consistent. And my last advice to anyone that's running any of the events at the Canadian Mountain Run is just be confident because you've done the work now and enjoy the day because it is an amazing experience. And Lincoln, there was the slogan that every step is a sort of a story and a journey as you go through, and just be really confident that you've done the work and just enjoy the day because it is an amazing, amazing event.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've actually just seen we've got one more question there. I'm going to throw it open before we shut down here for the night. It's from Jake, and he's asked, are hard plyometric training sessions, squat jumps, box jumps, jumping lunges, etc., beneficial for training running? Or is it too taxing on the body combined with the mileage? Jed, that seems right up your alleyway there. What have we got for that one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a combination of doing those plyometric training sessions and actually the trail running can work in some people's favour. What we do at Kieser is very different in terms of more controlled, structured, slower movements to engage. But certainly there's some evidence out there to suggest that plyometric training is really beneficial for running in general and probably trail running in some senses as well to, get those explosive movements to get up the mountain and things like that.
That's awesome. Thanks for that, Jake. Thanks for such a great question. It snuck in there. I'd missed it, but glad we got that one answered for you. And finally, Dave Bailey, what are we doing in the last 4 weeks? What is Dave Bailey doing in the 4 weeks leading up to, apart from gone nuts this weekend and doing, just a casual 50K, what's our last 4 weeks look like for you?
So unfortunately, my response is very similar to Jack and Jed's because their responses were excellent. So as Jed said, you've done all the hard work now. You might have a couple of really long runs coming up, your longest runs, but you just have to have that belief. So it's a really important time just to prepare the mind as well. So I like to do a lot of visualization of the course and how I'm going to feel on race day, the things that could go wrong. And I feel that visualization really gives you the confidence on the day that you've planned everything out, and no matter what goes wrong, you can deal with it. So I think that's really important. And as Jack said before, it's just making sure that you do all the 1%ers still, sticking to your plan, and really listening to the body. If you do need to skip that very long last run, then, if you wake up and you've got a sore throat or you're sick, then do so because, take a rest day, I should say, because, that could really derail your whole training block. So listen to the body. If you need to take a day off here and there, that's absolutely fine. There's no point getting injured before the event.
I think that is some top level advice. Of course, as the MC, all I've heard is take the days off, which is great. But for all you runners out there, I think we've covered some great topics tonight. I'd really like to thank all our panelists tonight. We have Jack Saward. She is one of our scholarship team for 2025, and she will be taking on the 25K mountain run. And of course, Dave Bailey, our KMR scholarship coach. We thank him not only for being here with us tonight, but also being part of the scholarship. And Jed Morgan from Kieser, a fantastic sponsor of the KMR event. I will remind you all that we do have the International Women's Day fun runs, the get together on the 8th of March from the Cascade Brewery at 8:30. There's a 4K event and an 8K event, and then there will be some awesome panel discussions after those events. It's run through the local running clubs, so jump onto your local running club here in Hobart and get on that one. We are 4 weeks away from KMR. It's going to be an epic weekend. We've got Welcome to Trails as our discussion next Wednesday night, where I'll be joined by another group of panellists. But I'd like to thank our panellists from tonight for their time. Thank you for joining us here on Facebook Live. Don't forget to jump on the socials for @KMR, @Kunani Mountain Run. Tag us every step of story. We are looking forward to seeing you on the mountain and running with Kunani in just over 4 weeks' times. I am Maney Taz_MC. I look forward to welcoming you all across the finish line at KMR, and we'll see you all again next week. Thanks, guys.